Okay, so I started recording, but we'll give folks another minute or two and then we'll get started.
Alexa, put a 15-minute timer.
15 minutes from now.
Okay. Oh, is that me? No, that's not me. Okay. I always have something goes strange with the pinning of someone else on the screen as opposed to, so then I have to go, I don't know why. So now Mary Price is pinned to the screen.
I don't, what I only have are 9 tiles, so I'm not sure which view I'm looking at, but anybody who's outside of that 9, oh, now it's you, Martha, you're pinned.
Yeah, I figured out how to pin myself so it wouldn't keep alternating, but it's supposed to be able to alternate between who's speaking to, you know, there's different views. I still am not the best at, well, anyway, we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome to the Sugar Shift Challenge. For anyone who's new and doesn't know, I am Martha Carlin. I'm the founder of the Bio Collective and the BiotiQuest brand of probiotics. And I will sort of be your guide on this journey through the Sugar Shift Challenge, but also we do a lot of education about health and food, and we bring in other experts to help us learn. So I'll be doing that. And then we also have with us Jennifer Baines. So I'll let Jennifer introduce herself. She is does personal coaching. So she helps us with the Sugar Shift Challenge. And then for people who really want to dive in, and I'll let her tell you a bit about that, but we have a personal coaching option that you can do with Jennifer. So Jen, you want to
Sure. Yeah, there are
pin
some new faces here. Oh, okay. I didn't. Now I have to see my bad hair. Okay. I see a few familiar names here and then some new names. So if you don't know who I am, I have the great privilege of working with Martha and with Dr. William Davis. And between the two of them, these guys are on the cutting edge of microbiome research and metabolism research. And these are my two favorite areas. So the way I help people and guide people is that I take, what I can from this brilliant bank of knowledge and help people implement it into their daily lives and their daily diet through one-on-one coaching. And this year I'm talking about a potential group coaching scenario as well. And if that comes into play, then I will definitely let everybody know. Because I do see the value in sharing stories, and especially when it comes to gut health problems. So one-on-one coaching is primarily what I do. And hi, Normal. And yeah, and you're just in the right place if you want to be on that cutting edge, that bleeding edge of what's happening in the world of microbiome, what's happening with metabolic health. This is the place to be. So thanks, Martha.
Great. Thanks, Jen. So, I mean, some of you have been here before, but I'll tell the story again for the new people, and then we play the recording as people join along the way. Sugar Shift is a probiotic that I originally formulated for my husband, John, with Parkinson's. And one of the interesting things about Parkinson's, I reviewed a very large set of data from a hospital. And there's something called a comorbidity. If you're not familiar with that term, it means you have more than one thing. And this data of 15,000 Parkinson's patients over 2 decades, I think, showed that the two comorbidities that people with Parkinson's had the most were issues with blood sugar. So diabetes, both hypo and hyperglycemia, so dysregulated blood sugar, and dyslipidemias, so problems with lipid metabolism, whether that was triglycerides or how or cholesterol issues. And so I found that very interesting. But when we made the sugar shift formula, it was based on some research that showed that the sugar alcohol mannitol could stop the aggregation of the proteins involved in Parkinson's. And so I came back and started to study that and found that there are microbes that convert the sugars glucose and fructose into mannitol, which we don't use, but microbes do use them. And so it helps feed a broader, healthier profile. It's like a prebiotic for the microbiome. And so we made our sugar shift formula originally for John, and then that was in 2017, and really didn't even think about commercializing it until 2021, which is when we brought that and some of our other products to market, which I can talk about on another occasion. But in the process of that, we also decided to do a clinical trial in diabetes. And so in 2021, we did a clinical trial in Cuba with 60 people. So we had 30 people on the probiotic and 30 people who were not. And it was a double-blind clinical trial. And we had some very good results. And then at the end of that study, we unblinded the participants, and we took 10 people and kept them on the sugar shift product for another 90 days so that we could measure again HbA1c, which in the first 30 days stayed pretty consistent. I mean, then the first 90 days was still pretty consistent, but then after the second 90-day period, we saw a 14% decrease in HbA1c. And so we learned some things about, how long reshaping the microbiome takes. We also know that, so HbA1c is a measure of glycated blood cells, and your red blood cells typically live for about 120 days. So, after 90 days, you would still have red blood cells that were from a, much earlier period of time. So that's also why using that as a metric, anytime you start something new, if you're expecting to see a change in your A1C in 30 days or even 60 days, you're probably not going to see that kind of a change. But what we did see was changes in blood sugar, changes, reduction in insulin, improvement in a measure called HOMA-IR, which is a measure of insulin resistance, and improved insulin sensitivity is what we saw. And we also measured something called serum endotoxin, or serum LPS. And that's an indication. LPS is the cell walls of gram-negative bacteria, and they're highly inflammatory. And they're implicated in things like depression, in Parkinson's, in diabetes. And we saw a significant reduction in the endotoxin, in the serum endotoxin. So, sugar shift, while we do talk about its effect on blood sugar, because of that significant drop in endotoxin, really it's a great overall probiotic for supporting metabolic health and reducing that endotoxin load, which people don't even realize how much of a burden of endotoxin they're kind of carrying around. So that's a bit about the product. Then over the course of this 6-month challenge, we will have a number of speakers come, but I'm particularly excited to have a longtime friend of mine, Alan Lewis, join us. And I think he's going to be able to join us on the call in 2 weeks. Alan is a food policy expert and advocate and works for the specialty natural grocery store, Vitamin Cottage and Natural Grocers, which is pretty much across the West and maybe some in the Midwest, but it's more of a Western and Pacific Northwest natural grocery store. And they're very, very focused on screening their vendors and the quality of the food that they provide. And so Alan's actually going to talk to us about, what's going on in our food supply, what to look for. And he works a lot with farmers and farming on the organic front. So he'll talk to us about that. And then, his focus currently, he has really become active in raising concerns about synthetic biology, which is basically genetically engineered microbes. And if you're not familiar with those, we can talk a bit about those. We're also going to do things a little bit different this time. I think we're going to put out a survey questionnaire of really to find out more about what your goals are in participating in the challenge this time around, and make sure that we are addressing your interests and concerns and providing the kind of education that you want in this program. And we'll be doing some surveys along the way to see how you're doing. Are you achieving your goals? Are we getting you the kind of information that you are interested in learning about? And so, we've listed a number of the speakers that we're going to have. Another one that's focused on food is Logan Duvall. Logan has a podcast called Sowing Prosperity, but is also has a local farmers market and grocery in Arkansas, and is really focused on food quality at a level I've never really heard someone focus at the level he is focusing. In fact, he's taking samples of the grass-fed meat that he's getting from vendors and sending it off for analysis to see what the mineral content and the nutritional content of the meat is, because what he's found is, different suppliers have, very different quality. And so I think that'll be another interesting conversation for us to have. But we'll probably, for tonight, we're going to keep it light. It's just an introduction. So, maybe I'd love it if anyone wants to raise their hand and tell us why you're joining us. I see some familiar faces, but it'd be great to have you introduce yourself and say why you're joining us if you'd like to do that. No pressure at all, but it's kind of fun. You get to know people along the way, and we have our regulars, and it feels kind of like a family by the time you get to the end of it. Norma Jean.
Hi, everybody. I started doing Sugar Shift, wow, a long time ago. I don't remember exactly when. And I also have my dad on it. And I know he just had a lot of blood work done in the last several months. And he had gone from 5.7 to 5.3, and he's now down to 5.0.
Ooh.
So that's a bonus.
That's great.
I can't tell you how much mine's dropped, because I haven't had lab work done in about 5 years. So I need to do that. And I just haven't done it because I moved and I can't find a doctor that I like. But I'm actually interested in just learning more about how to correct your microbiome, because I did take penicillin every day for 20 plus years from the time I was 3 until the time I was 23, because I had rheumatic fever. So that was the treatment back in the day, was to take antibiotics for the rest of your life, which at some point along the way they said, oh, you don't need to do that anymore.
Wow.
So that's my story. And hopefully I mean, I also did, trying to think which the name of it is. I did a microbiome test, and I did have a lot of, I guess, bad bacteria, or not.
the endotoxin, some of the
Yeah.
endotoxin producers. Yeah.
Yes, and I had a huge amount of acromantia, which I'm guessing that I have tamed that a little bit, because the symptoms that I had when I had a lot of acromantia, I don't have anymore. So I'm assuming that that's gone down.
Well, that's actually at some point along the way, I may do a little brief presentation on acromantia, because there's a product on the market, and I often get people asking me, should I buy that product? And it's really it's a microbe that is a double-edged sword. And I always tell people, I would not take a live organism. There is a product where they're heat killing it, so it's just the cell wall components that can do some signaling, and that might be okay. But taking the microbe itself, I think there's enough of it does good things, but it can do bad things, like eat the mucus in the lining of your gut and make leaky gut worse. And it is elevated in a number of inflammatory situations, like multiple. It's elevated in multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's both. So,
I mean,
it's
I used the pendulum product, and I only did one bottle of it over the course of probably a year. But I also did other things that, in the wheat belly group, Dr. Davis talks about taking astaxanthin, and I was taking astaxanthin. And like I said, he didn't tell us at the beginning when we started taking the astaxanthin, at least that I don't remember. But later on, he said, "Oh, it turns out that feeds acromantia." So I stopped taking the astaxanthin. And I mean, I was still doing all the other things, and prebiotic fibers of all different sorts, and I make yogurts with a bunch of different microbes, several of yours, and the true bifido, to get some of those microbes in there. And I mean, it's hard to say what caused all my problems. Like I said, I also went to a new functional practitioner who said, "Oh, you're allergic to beef, pork, chicken, eggs, dairy." And I had really never had a problem with eating anything that I was aware of. But when I spoke to Dr. Magarinos, he said what happens is when you're out of balance like that it's possible that you're not really allergic to all those things, but you do have a histamine response because of the imbalance and because of the leaky gut. So I'm going to kind of assume that that's kind of
that makes sense, actually.
So
Okay, Mary Ramos.
Hello, good evening. I am on a journey of healing from SIBO. I probably still have SIBO, and it's been a bad journey for me. My I don't have my gallbladder. So when I started Dr. Davis's program, I guess the extra fat in the diet caused more
problems.
damage. Probably damage in my small intestine because I didn't have enough bile to digest it also. But it's getting better. I'm working on that. I am cutting way back on vegetables. I haven't gone carnivore, but pretty close. I read she's not a doctor, Sally Norton's book about oxalates poisoning,
Mm-hmm.
and discovered that, oh yeah, I have really overdone oxalates
Mhm.
a lot. So I've cut down and I'm on a low oxalate diet right now. And I have seen improvements in my joints and stuff like that since cutting
that-
down on oxalates.
Is that spinach and almonds and that kind of thing?
Yes. And I'm a gardener, so I was growing okra. And okra is really high, and I would eat a skillet full of that stuff, a couple times a week. It was so good. It was just plain okra fried in some oil, just plain. So it was really good on the diet. So, but I ate that, and I ate a lot of almond flour and spinach every morning for breakfast. Spinach for salads. That was bad. So I have seen improvements, and I'm seeing improvements, but I still have SIBO. I don't know how to get rid of SIBO. I've done the yogurts with Dr.
So, um, I'll tell you guys a little bit of a biohack that I learned. So there's a scientist who's helping me with my husband John and our Parkinson's hypothesis, and part of what we've been looking at is what's going on in the microbiome. And with John, he has some symptoms of some pretty dramatic electrolyte swinging. And so Dr. Ninham suggested that I try like changing the temperature of John's stomach when he was eating, and then also when he went to bed. And so we just started putting like a little ice pack about this big on his stomach when he eats, because the gram-negative bacteria, a number of them produce an enzyme called urease, and then that would kill the good bacteria that would then spill their calcium and potassium into the gut, creating this very concrete like constipation, which is what we see in Parkinson's. And just by having him put an ice pack on his stomach when he's eating or when he goes to bed at night has dramatically changed. So he's not getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom all the time. He's he's not having the crazy electrolyte swings that he used to have during the daytime. And so that's a simple something that you might try with the SIBO, because that colder temperature may change the behavior of the microbes.
Oh, well, that sounds like a good idea. I have so much gas. I'm not constipated anymore because now I have the diarrhea, but I've been able to get it under control by taking betaine, HCl,
HCl, yeah.
and also oxbile. But so how long do you have to leave the ice pack on at night when you go to bed?
Well, he just falls asleep with it on his stomach, and it falls off at some point during the night. But
Uh-huh. Okay.
he wraps it in a towel, so it's not like you have to put the bare ice pack on your bare skin. So it's just you're trying to rate. So like essentially a half a degree change can make a difference in these microbes, which is may seem strange to some people, but for somebody who's worked in the lab for almost 10 years,
Right.
the way we change how a microbe grows is we move the temperature up and down, and we change the pH, and we add different things to the media. So it made a lot of sense to me.
I have a follow-up question to that for Mary and for me, actually, if you guys don't mind. So 2 questions, actually. How would Martha, do you think, and Jennifer, is it Jennifer?
Yes.
how do you think enzymes would affect that?
Enzymes. Well, I'm taking enzymes.
Okay.
Well,
Take enzymes in my meal.
Well, I mean, I know sometimes certain enzymes like serapeptase can affect the gram-negative and specifically lipopolysaccharides, right? So,
Yep.
so I'm just wondering if that has anything to do with this formula.
So we don't put enzymes in our formula, but we do. So all of our formulas contain a strain of Bacillus subtilis, which is a soil organism, DE111, that has been studied quite a bit. And Bacillus subtilis is the organism that is found in natto and some other fermented foods. It does make proteolytic enzymes like serapeptase. I think.
I'm sorry, Martha. I confused language there. I meant just in the formula of all like what she's talking about. I didn't mean your formula. I'm sorry. That was
Okay, sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. That was kind of confusing.
But you know what I see with people is okay. So in order for enzymes to work in the body, enzymes require minerals. So minerals are the power of the enzymes,
Mhm.
and different enzymes require different minerals. But glyphosate, which I talk a lot about, glyphosate in the food supply, glyphosate basically binds the minerals. It was first patented as a mineral chelator for pipes
Wow.
to get the gunk that sticks to the pipes. That's what it was originally patented as. So it's a very powerful chelator. It chelates the metals, so the nutrients are not necessarily available for the plant. And then, of course, if you have it in your gut, it's chelating minerals in your body and affecting enzyme efficiency. So I do think that's why some people benefit from taking enzymes, but I also think like ultimately our goal needs to be to get back to have a healthy gut that can make its own enzymes.
Yeah, I agree. I would
If
be
we can, if we can get there, that's our goal.
Mhm.
But
Right.
it's hard with the food supply we have and the level of glyphosate in the food.
Right. Yeah, I'm taking the sugar shift twice a day for the, because of the glyphosate. I mean, I still am eating some vegetables. Yeah.
So
have
I
you
don't know
had-
how many people are. Go ahead, Mary.
I was just wondering if you had any experience with your husband with the oxalate issue. I know that Dr. Davis says Dr. Norton, I mean, sadly, Norton is exaggerating, but have you had any
Well,
experience with it?
I haven't. I won't say specifically that, but I had an interest in spinach um, anyway, because spinach, I have a whole theory around something called molecular mimicry, where you have proteins or genetic sequences basically that are essentially identical in a human or a plant or a microbe. And so one in particular is called aquaporin 4, and that controls fluid going in and out of a cell. And it's particularly associated with fluid in the central nervous system and the brain going in and out. And spinach has an aquaporin 4. Corn has an aquaporin 4. I can't remember if wheat does. But so you can get antibodies to that aquaporin 4 from eating the spinach. And then your antibodies are attacking your own aquaporin that's needed for fluid water transport and other liquids in and out of the cell. So I have kind of a nerdy presentation on molecular mimicry that you can find on our BiotiQuest YouTube channel if you want to
Oh.
watch it. That I
Okay.
did for a seminar in Cuba that they were called Bio Havana. But anyway, I
Well,
did a talk on that.
Dr. Davis talks about mimicry like with wheat causing so much damage
Yes.
to the body.
So yeah, wheat in particular has it has a couple of heat shock proteins that are very close to human proteins that are definitely problematic. So
So I have a micro question. I bought that Vita Life kombucha and I've been trying, I put it in some juice to grow it the same way that Dr. Davis said to do. And my juice I couldn't see any activity at all. So I put a probiotic capsule that I have. It has that Subtilis DE111 in it and some
Yep.
other, but it's still not doing anything. It's just sitting in my oven at, well, now it's gone up to 95 degrees. Do you think that's too high for the Subtilis? Dr. Davis had said something about 90.
Well, if you just think about soil microbes, the soil is typically cooler, except right at the surface. So, I mean, I'd have to look at what the optimal growing temperature. We grow most of our soil-based organisms though at about 37°C, I think, in the lab anyway.
37 is what?
That's like body temperature, basically body
98,
temperature.
right?
Yeah.
So this is less than body temperature at 95. But
So, I mean, you need this, like if you're trying to grow DE111, it's in a spore. So you need to get the spore to germinate. And I'd have to look up how you would go about that, but, or
With
ask Raul.
Yeah, because it's not working for me. I don't know what I did wrong. If anything, maybe it was dead already. I mean, it's a kombucha from Aldi's. No telling how long it might have been there.
I think Brenda had her hand up, but now your hand up isn't up, Brenda. Did you want to pop on or?
Wait, did that work?
It did
Am I
work.
on? Oh, wait, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure what to say. I've got tons of problems and I'm fortunately talking to Jennifer and she's helping, but I'm in the process of detoxing right now with Candibac and AR and BR and curcumin. So I'm really not, I'm taking Ideal Immunity, but and Gut to Glow and not taking too many beneficial bacteria right now. I think that's the right approach. I'm hoping. And then recede later. I'm guessing that's correct. I have myasthenia gravis. Do you know what that is? Have you heard of it?
Yes,
It's a thyroid.
thyroid issue, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's acetylcholine attacks the muscle receptors and prevents the muscles, voluntary muscles, from moving. So actually, I had a open heart surgery last November and had massive transfusions. So I had someone else's blood in my system, and I totally didn't have myasthenia at that point. I could eat anything I wanted, corn, wheat, and then after 2 months, my own blood came back. They also took out the thymus at that point, thymus gland, which is supposed to be implicated in myasthenia gravis, but it doesn't always work when it's taken out. But anyway, what I'm saying is when my own blood came back, then the myasthenia has gotten actually worse than it was before, which is very odd. I mean, it's pretty, walking is
Difficult.
yeah, and I totally got over the myasthenia in 2015 I saw a naturopath online. Again, it was a program. Have you heard of Krista Recchio in California? You probably haven't. She's not doing that anymore, but she was kind of a TV star. And Tom O'Brien, you know who he is. He
Yeah, I'm
promoted,
familiar with Tom. Yeah.
he promoted this. And so I did it for a year, and it really got rid of it. And it was a very strict diet. I mean, virtually nothing but meat and vegetables. That was it. And I did cheat some, but not much. But anyway, so I'm every time I'm on these webinars, I learned something. And I was very curious about, you're talking about the minerals, because I just recently, I haven't even opened it yet, but I've tried supplementing with some minerals from various sources, and it doesn't, I don't know if that's the thing to do or not.
Well, it's interesting. So I actually am trained in something called the root cause protocol that is very focused on minerals.
Uh-huh.
And in particular, iron overload and
Yeah,
copper and magnesium deficiency.
right. And Jennifer was talking about that. And right now, my iron is through the roof. I just had a lab test, and it's very high. And
So
I
that the blood transfusions will have elevated your iron.
Is that it?
Well, you may have already had high iron. Or what
I don't.
are
I-
you of Northern European descent by chance?
England, France, and Germany.
So about 10% of people from Northern Europe have something called hemochromatosis, or there are, so hemochromatosis is typically diagnosed if you have two mutations in one particular gene, but as it turns out, there are a number of other genes involved in iron storage overload. But
Right.
that particular hemochromatosis gene is much more prevalent, and about 10% of the Northern European population has hemochromatosis. And
Uh-huh.
I would definitely encourage you to look at iron overload and how you might be able to address that. We found a supplement. I mean, of course, blood donation and things like that you can do to lower your iron, but we're taking a supplement called IP6 Gold, and that
Okay.
seems to help balance out all of the minerals, but iron and copper in particular. Which has
Okay.
been interesting. And I recently listened to, I'll try to find the interview. Jeffrey Smith, who's the
Oh, yeah.
responsible technology, he did an interview with the founder of Beam Minerals, BEAM, and
Okay.
it's a humic fulvic acid
All
supplement.
right. Yeah.
And we've started taking those and have noticed a difference with those, because
Okay.
some of the other minerals, because my husband was having these big electrolyte swings,
Yes.
we kind of determined that some of the mineral stuff that he was doing was actually kind of making those swings worse.
I see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you think the humic fulvic acid would be a good route rather than
Well, it's
supplementing?
definitely something to look at, and
Yeah.
Jen knows a lot about all that stuff, so
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
but yeah, have they looked for antibodies that you might have gotten from the
Oh yeah, I definitely have them. For the acetylcholine the antibodies attack the muscle receptor. So the
Right.
acetylcholine can't get to the muscle receptor to move the muscle. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes perfect sense. Okay, this will sound really weird, maybe,
I
but
try everything.
so there's actually, I mean, that acetylcholine receptor, or the ACE, basically. That's also the receptor that the coronavirus attaches to,
Oh, I think I
and it's
did read.
also
Yeah.
implicated in Parkinson's to some degree. And there is a uh,
What
doctor
what
who had,
happened to me
yeah, go ahead.
after, I'm sorry, but I didn't have this until I got Epstein-Barr virus in a college thing. And I never had it until, oh, I had it, but it didn't bother me until I was like in my 50s, maybe. And that's when it hit, maybe even 60s. And then the flu shot sent me with one week I couldn't walk. And I did the second COVID shot sent me crazy, and I will never take another shot. I know that's what caused it. The second COVID
So,
shot I haven't gotten over yet. That was what,
okay,
3 or 4
so
Yeah.
you might look up Dr. Brian Ardis. Um, he's he has a I think he has a podcast or a show called the Dr. Brian Ardis Show, and he has a protocol for vaccine injury. But what I was going to tell you is he also told me he thought it would benefit Parkinson's, and I have tried it with John, and it has helped him. Is basically taking a nicotine patch, and because nicotine uh, goes into the acetylcholine receptor, and so then, and
Yeah.
that's also the receptor where the spike protein attaches, and I
Yeah.
guess it will preferentially bind the nicotine and drop the spike protein. And he tells a story of, so his wife, I can't remember whether it was the vaccine or actually having had COVID, but she had long COVID or vaccine injury, one or the other.
Yeah.
They're both very similar. And, she wouldn't listen to him. And then finally, I guess somebody he had talked to, it made a difference. So you could chew the gum. So John actually chews the gum for about 3 to 5 minutes, and takes
Yeah.
activated charcoal. So he'll chew the gum for 5 minutes, take a couple of activated charcoal pills to bind it up and take it out. And that has
Right.
helped him a lot. So it seems at first you're
Wonderful.
like that, so I would look at that and
Yes.
look into,
Yes. That
he's done a number
wonderful.
of shows about it. So, it's worth a
Yeah.
try.
It is. And actually, now that you mentioned the nicotine, one of the medicines had nicotinamide. I don't exactly.
Yep.
Anyway,
Yep.
yeah, that's right. Great. Thank you. Perfect.
You're welcome.
Martha, is the cleanse that you're talking about, or the product that you're talking about for him, called the Foreign Protein Cleanse?
Well, he does have
I'm
yes,
on
he
his
has
site.
yeah, so he does have the foreign protein cleanse. And I tried that for John, but then I also have somebody, a biofeedback machine, and they tested that, and it wasn't, his body didn't want it.
Mhm.
But I do have like 3 bottles of the foreign protein cleanse because John had a very, very severe COVID at the end of 2021 and long COVID symptoms that we were working on really for the last 2 years. And he had been doing much better than about, I would say, maybe the end. We think he was exposed again somewhere. And he had a really, really rough July, going back the whole process of trying to, deal with blood pressure issues and the electrolyte issues and just kind of crazy health problems from what was probably COVID again. So there's a couple of things too. Just, I don't know if anyone here is a member of Weston Price, but the Weston Price Foundation, I have, so if you become a member, they have a quarterly magazine. I have an article coming out in their fall quarterly magazine where I am writing about the research we did with Dawn Huber on minerals and cabbage not keeping its structure in a sauerkraut. So Dawn did a 2-year study that we were part of using it's Yield and Shield on our website, but it's called Paleo Power on Ancient Organics, which is Raul's website. And essentially what Dr. Huber showed is, so this cabbage, it was organic cabbage grown in Wisconsin. Wisconsin has minerals depleted soils in a number of the key minerals that are important for the structural components of plants and humans. It's well known. So typically farmers have to add the nutrients that are in low abundance, but you can't add synthetic minerals to an organic crop. So they add manure, but they use conventional manure is approved for organic crops. And through this investigation, Dr. Huber ultimately figured out that what had happened was they applied 4 tons per acre of poultry manure from a well-known turkey company who will remain unnamed. But and that manure had close to it had more than a half a pound of glyphosate per ton. So you think, okay, if you're applying 4 tons per acre, you were applying 2 pounds of glyphosate, which was much more than what you would have applied in a conventional crop. And what happened was then it bound up the copper, manganese, cobalt, boron, iron. I can't remember. But so anyway, the finding was basically the cabbage couldn't maintain its structure because copper, zinc, and iron and manganese were needed for the cell wall structure, the lignin that's in the cabbage. And those are the same elements that we need for our collagen structure. It's the same elements that are needed in, say, chicken. When you make if you make your own chicken broth and you see that really, when you put it in the refrigerator after it's done and it congeals and it's very gel-like. Well, if you'll notice, I've noticed from time to time, in the last 5 years, I might get a chicken where, Mary, can you put yours on mute?
Sure.
Here, I'll do it. That you get a kind of you won't get the congealing, or you won't get the level of collagen. And so my article in the Weston Price magazine is about this connection and where those minerals break the shikimate pathway in plants, but it does the same thing in bacteria. And bacteria are what make our aromatic amino acids, which are essential to so many downstream metabolites, enzymes, just really important things, including dopamine, melanin. All of that is in, downstream made by microbes in this pathway. So that's an interesting article that's coming out. And then we also have a guest blog that is being written by an expert in mycotoxins, and that'll be out in September. And she's doing testing of mycotoxins in different foods. And one of the things I learned from her, you know, being a yogurt fan of, you know, the Dr. Davis yogurt, is that milk is high in mycotoxins because of what the cows are eating. So the cows are eating silage, and you know, they can be eating hay that's been baled for some period of time that may have mold growing in it. And so that was kind of a factor I hadn't really thought about in the milk. And so that made me think, okay, well, maybe in the summertime, you know, milk is going to be less inflammatory because those dairy cows are eating more of the grass out in the fresh grass. But as you move into the cooler and there's less grass outside for them to eat, they're being fed these other things to also increase their milk yield. You know, that might be an inflammatory factor in the yogurt, and it might be better to actually take the supplement than to make the yogurt if the milk is high in it. Or I mean mycotoxin, not endotoxin. But so anyway, that was an interesting learning for me, and I asked her to write a blog post about the different foods that she's tested. She's done a lot of testing of foods that children eat a lot of. And she got into this because her son was born like kind of almost born with very severe Crohn's disease. And she felt like she could trace it back to something she ate when she was pregnant. And so she started just looking into all this stuff and making a mycotoxin-free diet for him. And he's in his 20s now and is doing much, much better. But, you know, not that I want to make everybody terrified of food, but you have to be really mindful of the food you're eating. So I don't know if we have any more questions tonight, but this is just kind of an introductory, and we'll have typically we have speakers every other week, every other session. So we meet every 2 weeks, and every other session we'll have a speaker. Sometimes we'll have speakers too. Then have a going and update. So do we have any other questions?
Martha,
Yeah, Martha,
You're-
it's really breaking up.
yeah, you're really breaking up.
I think so. My internet has not been working for the last 3 or 4 hours, and I'm connected on my telephone my computer's connected to my phone, and somebody just tried to call me. So it probably sucked up some of the bandwidth.
I
do.
at the beginning,
I have a question about that.
you were talking about the test that you did for John, I guess, that measured LPS.
I didn't do it for John. We did it in our clinical trial. It's not a test that you can go to LabCorp or anywhere and get. They do. It's interesting because they do it in the hospital, because actually LPS is often what kills you in a septic infection.
That's what I was going to ask.
I think you might be able to get, it's called a limulus antibody test. You might be able to get.
How do you spell that?
LIMULUS or IS. It's either US or IS.
Okay.
It's strange because that test comes from the blue blood of the horseshoe crab.
Oh, I was reading about that a couple of years ago, where they said that horseshoe crabs are like almost extinct because they use.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Cool.
I don't know. It doesn't seem like everyone's going to have time to introduce themselves, so I won't take more than a minute. But I just wanted to say my name's Colleen, and like probably most people on this call, I've been on a pretty long health journey. I had systemic strep and also Rocky Mountain spotted fever at the same time, which was a problem because the doctors did not listen to me, even though I knew I had a tick bite. And I don't think that I had, I mean, I think I probably had low level strep, and then that unchecked for a year, really took me down and almost took me out. And finally they tested me and I was positive. So they finally gave me doxycycline, but unfortunately that was far too late to really be effective in a long-term infection like that. So my theory, and kind of listening to you, Martha, when I do like a food intolerance test, they now look at lipopolysaccharides and they look at your candida and all of that, current versus long term. And my lipopolysaccharides were very active. And I think my issue is that I have this kind of, like you were talking about, I think this is what you were saying, low level sort of microbes that aren't, going to kill you per se, but they're creating constant inflammation in the system. And they kind of fly below the radar because they're not causing really severe symptoms. They're causing a rash, or they're causing joint pain, or they're causing fibromyalgia, but they're not enough for Western doctors to really pay attention to or give any credence to. And I would say the same thing potentially happened with creeping in of Pseudomonas, because I had, when I was having strep repeatedly after that, and I had my tonsils taken out last October, which is very late, obviously, for, people our age. But I had strep after this, Rocky Mountain bout like 9 times over the last year and a half. And so I've had an unbelievable amount of, antibiotics trying to get rid of it, because it was systemic. I had full body rash. I had some really severe symptoms. So kind of unfortunately had to do it, and had this rash that developed that won't really go away, that they just call, it's on my elbows and my ankles. And they say and it used to be on the bottom of my feet and on my hands. And finally, after several bouts of some really intensive, supplements, I got rid of the hands, and it's gone from the bottom of my feet. It's still itchy on my ankles and my elbows and causes a psoriatic sort of situation. And I'm trying to figure out the links and the causes, and a lot of this low level, infection, or I'm not sure if it's endotoxin or what it is exactly that's causing. It's not so bad that it really, really horrifically negatively impacts my life now. I mean, it's much better than I was 2 years ago. I was at a pretty bad place 2 years ago. But I still think, and my mission and my sort of core, and I don't know if you remember, I was on one call a while back. You reminded me of you. I mean, I'm a researcher, and I'm a very capable person that retains this information really well. So I really feel like it's part mission to kind of help uncover like this. Most people, I think, would be very content with like being okay, but I feel like there is a root cause that's sort of tied into a lot of these issues that people are, and I very much am both understanding the glyphosate issue, but also think that's a huge part of a lot of these gut issues, and that the microbiome and rebuilding sort of the base for the microbiome is really the key to health in general. And if we can get some of that foundational, those keystones back in place, then they can help, and our body will do the job. Our body will do what it's supposed to do. So I'm really interested and committed, and I have about 7 bottles of this right now that I'm ready to go. So, that's me.
Well,
That's
so part of what sort of informed, some of my theory about chronic disease or, chronic problems. And, it started with looking at John's, but there's a researcher, you might be interested in his work. His name is Dr. Isaac Ginsberg, Burg.
Okay.
He was he died, I think, about a year ago. In his 90s. He was still publishing research all the way up to when he died. And a lot of what he studied was sepsis, but he also studied the effects of what he called post-infection sequela. And that's so part of my nerdy molecular mimicry talk. If you go listen to that,
Yeah.
I talk about him at the beginning, and I show a diagram of all these inflammatory compounds that come out of, when the bacteria gets lysed, what happens. I think that diagram is missing some things, as I've learned along the way. But I have said, like, almost since the beginning of starting to look at the microbiome 9.5 years ago, that I felt like John's Parkinson's was a low-grade polymicrobial chronic infection. And if you map out the different organisms and what their acute symptoms are, and you say, well, what would that be if it was kind of at a low level? You start to see, you can map it out. It's like, but doctors don't know anything about these microbes.
Right. I agree with you. I think all of these start, and it just depends on your genetics and all of this and what you've been exposed to as to what direction it goes in.
Right, you're right. And I sort of chuckled to myself that I am the ambassador of the microbes, because I've known Morley Robbins, and Morley will be on here, of the RCP for probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. And I didn't know that much about minerals other than glyphosate was a problem with minerals. But Morley didn't know anything about microbes. And so over the course of our 5-year relationship, I've been the microbial ambassador of everything he sends me. I'll send him something back and go, well, microbes make that, or microbes can break that down. And
sorry, that was my fault. Oops. Sorry, that was my fault. I tried to open it so that I could chat, but
yeah, so I do that with a lot of my scientific research friends who are in other fields where they don't know about microbes, and we can learn from each other. So that's the other reason why I like having people on here with some different backgrounds and stuff, and we start together, we start to come up with new ideas and kind of put things together.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
Okay, there's some other folks on here that haven't raised their hand to introduce themselves. I don't know if you are just being shy, or so I don't want to call you out, but we'd love to hear from you if you haven't introduced yourself. Mary Price, I think you have to unmute. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Okay, this is my second journey with the Sugar Shift Challenge. I so appreciate all your products. And my husband also was on it last session. His A1C is 5.0. I did not test mine, but I want to give credit where it belongs. I certainly want a healthy gut. SIBO has been the challenge. I had it gone and it came back. And I just want to be a sponge to learn from everyone. I'm a clinician at heart, and also I was a grass-fed beef farmer. Used to be with Weston Price Foundation as well. So yeah, I just want to be a sponge and absorb it all. And I keep having people come into my life who I go, oh my goodness. And if I can help them out of the kindness of my heart, then that's great too. So I'm just going to keep listening.
Well, great. It's good to have you back, Mary.
Thank you.
And we have Diane. Diane, you want to introduce yourself? You have to unmute. Diane Boyd. Click your little microphone.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Hi, I'm Diane Boyd. I've been involved in functional medicine as a patient for the last decade. I started with late stage, like Colleen, late stage Lyme disease with 4 co-infections, Babesia, Bartonella, Ehrlichia, and relapsing tick fever. And then after 7 years of antibiotics and antimicrobials, I ended up with SIBO, H. pylori, a lot of skin infections that then didn't heal, bacterial infections and that. So I've been doing Dr. Davis for the last 8 months, and that's made a tremendous difference. I've been doing the Sugar Shack, and I really notice it helps to like curb my appetite and improve my mood. So those are things that have been very helpful to me. So I'm glad to be a part of this.
Well, we're glad to have you. Now, I think there's somebody initial P. I don't know if you want to introduce yourself. Well, we also had a request for Jennifer to tell a little bit more about her background. So let's, I'll.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Well, I
Is
really
that
would
okay?
love just to hear about how we could work with her if needed. Like
Yeah.
that's, I mean, if that's possible and like how to do that.
Sure.
It sounds
Yeah.
like somebody is already doing that on this phone call, but
I'm going to put my email in the chat right now. Can you hear it? I've got a terrible lag in my video. Maybe I
yes.
should turn my video off. I'm not sure if that'll help. Okay, sometimes this helps. Yes, please email me. What I typically do is jump on a 15-minute discovery call, and then you can ask your questions and share your personal health goals, and we can see if we're a good fit. And I typically work with people on a monthly basis. So I have several different programs, but my most popular one is monthly. We meet every other week. And then on the off weeks, there's accountability and support, and I offer unlimited emailing. And that's $250 a month. So it's live meetings, and then in those off weeks, still coaching support. That's for the most part how I work with people. And then I have some more intensive weekly programs that and this, I don't think it really would apply to anyone here, but like my obese clients who need weekly one-on-one coaching. That's important that I'm in front of them a little bit more frequently than every other week. Sometimes my very ill SIFO, someone's just really struggling and they don't know what to eat, and just the basics of feeding them is very difficult. Some of you know this when you have SIBO and you just don't know what to eat anymore. Just food goes right through you, and how do we nourish you? That's very important to me, is making sure my clients are well fed and nourished. So, so that's part of my, it's part of what I do, but then there's that sort of more intense level So does that answer your questions?
And we will
That's-
also put out in the email, in the follow-up email, we'll put out some more information on direct contact with Jennifer and
Okay.
how to get in touch. So there were a couple people on here who mentioned tick bites and and if you've been on this journey for a while, you've probably read this book, but if you haven't, there's a book called Bitten. Are you familiar with that book?
I've had people tell me about it, but I have not read it. I read Bill Rawls' book. Do you know that book? His Lyme Journey. He's a doctor. He was a doctor who also, but I think the lady who read, is she from North Carolina? Who wrote Bitten?
She might be. I think she was originally living in Lyme, Connecticut,
Okay.
but she might be in North Carolina now. She was a, journalist, author who got Lyme disease and started researching it and ultimately ended up. So the book, a good bit of the book is her interviews and discussion with Dr. Borg-Dürferi, who actually who did the weaponization of the tick.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, it's a crazy world we live in.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. I used to work in a functional medical clinic that specialized in chronic Lyme and chronic mold, and it just seemed like there's a relationship there as well with each other and SIBO. But I did put a link in the chat. If anyone is bitten by a tick, this has instructions on where to send the tick. You can send the tick in for testing. I like to make sure people know that during the summer months. So
The crazy thing is I saved my tick and I called my doctor, and this was years ago. I'm more knowledgeable now, but I was ready to send it in. They told me to throw it away, that wouldn't be helpful. So anyway.
They just don't they're just not trained at all anymore in infectious disease. And so they really have no knowledge. And so they're, depending on what kind of doctor you're going to, they're focused on their very narrow specialty. And, to them, everything else is irrelevant. It's kind of nuts. And that's sort of what's gotten us where we are. But anyway, so we're here together and we'll be on this journey over the next 6 months. And I look forward to seeing all of you back in 2 weeks. And I think we'll have Alan Lewis at that session and we'll talk about food.
excellent. And
More food
Martha,
to eat.
did you want to talk about the book club?
Well, so yes, so we do have a book club if you want to join the book club. I did decide I've been doing too many like super nerdy books. And so September is the last of the super nerdy books. It's a book called Virolution by Frank Ryan. But the 2 books coming up after that, I actually just got one of them. Called Dark Calories.
I have that book. It's so good.
And it's the kind of the story of vegetable oils. And the other book, I'm waiting for a used copy because I guess it was an older book. I didn't realize it was an older book. It's called Good Energy by Casey Means. And she was a Stanford trained doctor who quit what she was, she was at the pinnacle of, like, head and neck surgery or something, and quit what she was doing because she wasn't helping people get better, and started to try to figure out what was wrong. And it's about kind of what's wrong with the medical system and what's wrong with the food. And And so I'm interested to see it because she says she has a plan and recipes in there on improving your energy. It's
Do you know
about
if she
energy.
does energy medicine? Does she do energy medicine? Is that what that's about? No. Okay.
I don't think I don't think it's about that. But what I will say, I mean, I probably won't. Well, I might. I don't know. I have. We have a woman that we work with who does biofeedback, which is a form of energy
Yeah.
therapy, and that has been really remarkable for John.
Have
But
you read
you know,
Donna? Have you guys read Energy Medicine by Donna Eden? The front of that book looks a lot like the front of her book, and that looks like, I mean, that might be helpful for you guys.
which one? What?
It's called Energy Medicine by Donna Eden.
I think I might have. I might have it. I have so many. I have so many. Like if you saw, I'm actually also trained in. So I don't practice it, but I'm trained in something called Healing Touch. That was by
She started
Barbara-
with healing.
yeah, Barbara Brennan, and I'm trained in 3 levels of Healing Touch, which I used to do that quite a bit on my kids and John, but I don't do it. And then I actually I have a friend in Colorado who does something called acutonics, which is essentially like acupuncture, Chinese medicine using tuning forks. So I'm sitting here staring at a tuning fork
Mm-hmm.
because well, so energy is vibration, and vibration has the frequency of vibration has a lot of impact on microbes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
like for me, the more I spend time with my microbes, the more I understand like how they connect everything. They
Yeah.
connect everything.
Have you
So-
guys done, sorry, one last question, frequency specific microcurrent? Have you done anything with that?
I don't know that we have. I feel like
I
I've
think
heard
that-
of it, but I don't think we have.
Yeah. Well,
Done biomagnetism. That's interesting too, given related to the iron overload, because iron is magnetic, and John is actually he is significantly impacted by a couple of things that I don't know if other people will notice. He cannot walk into a Costco where they have the big glaring
mhm.
as he gets to the front of the door and the door's open with all those lights, he freezes. And so we don't go anywhere that has big, bright, those industrial blue lights. And he's also very sensitive to electromagnetic fields and solar radiation.
Mhm.
So,
Too.
I'm constantly observing all these strange things. So anyway,
Well, thank you.
thank you guys for coming. It looks like our guest is maybe lost and my husband has not been able to find them. So I'm going to go see if I can find, like we live on a farm that is up about 1.5 miles up a gravel road behind 2 gates. So it's not that easy to find. So, oh, wait, Brenda Thornton
Well,
raised her
when
hand.
is how do you sign up for the book club? I'm not sure when it meets.
So the book club, Bridget, are you on here? I saw Bridget, but she might be off now.
I'm here. You want me to send the
Kevin,
link?
can you just either put the link up here or we can send Brenda,
Yes, I will do that.
okay. So we'll send you the info, Brenda.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks everybody. We'll
Thank
see you
you.
next time.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.